Welcome back to English from A to Z. So if you're tuning in, chances are you felt it too, that kind of deep, unsettling feeling like something's just vibrating underneath all the noise of daily life. It's this sense that, structurally things feel fundamentally off, and you see signs of it everywhere. Take the economy, for instance. We just got this staggering correction to the job numbers.
Yeah, the revision.
Exactly. It basically wiped out 900,000 jobs that were supposedly created between March 2024 and 2025.
900,000.
Yeah,
That's not a small adjustment.
not at all. It feels like this huge clash between the official story and what people are actually experiencing.
Yeah.
The stock market keeps hitting highs, mostly driven by, a few big tech companies?
Right. Well, for most people.
For most people, yeah, real life stuff, rent, food, healthcare, it's just getting exponentially tougher. It creates this intense, almost dizzying feeling, a disconnection.
And that disconnection, that's where a lot of the anger comes from, the division we see just bubbling up everywhere. It's natural, I think, when things feel unstable. You look for someone to blame, an easy target.
Yeah, find the villain.
Exactly. But the sources we've looked at, they suggest this isn't just random chaos, it's more systemic. It's like the predictable outcome of structural issues, and this is key, really messed up financial incentives.
Right. And that's our mission for this deep dive, isn't it? To zoom out a bit, try to give this feeling, this instability, some kind of framework, put a name to it, maybe some historical context.
Because these patterns exist. You hear people talk about like the fourth turning framework, this idea that societies go through these cycles, these generational crises, roughly every 80 years or so.
Or you look at economists like Ray Dalio.
Yeah, Dalio's work on long-term debt cycles, how empires rise, peak, overextend,
And then decline.
and then inevitably decline. He argues the U.S. is, well, deep in that phase right now. Massive debt, lots of internal conflict.
The point being, whatever model you use, this feeling of pressure, this sense that things are kind of unraveling, it's not unique to us. It happens.
This historical pattern.
So today, we're going to try and simplify some of these big ideas. We're looking at it through one particular lens.
Yeah.
Incentives and money.
Follow the money.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Because when you trace the financial incentives, you start to see that the anger, the division, even the economic fragility, it's not an accident. It's like the logical result of incentives getting twisted over time.
Our goal here is to give you, the listener, some context, enough clarity maybe to stay grounded, to feel a bit more sane when the world seems to reward the most divisive, sometimes craziest behavior.
Yeah, get beyond the daily headlines, understand the mechanics underneath, which brings us to the core idea for today's deep dive. It's like the glue that used to hold societies together, things like shared faith, maybe stable families, strong local communities, and owning stuff, property.
Stake in the system. Yeah.
Exactly, having a stake. That glue seems to be weakening. And what's left is this system that feels incredibly fragile.
Super fragile.
And we see that fragility showing up really clearly in two main areas. First, how our attention is basically being weaponized.
Right.
And second, the structural problems in our economy.
We should probably start with the attention part, the psychology, because honestly, that's where a huge amount of money is being made right now.
Okay, so let's unpack this first thing.
Yeah.
Our collective attention. We didn't just sort of drift into this era of constant outrage, did we?
No, not at all. We actively built a system. Think social media platforms, but also how legacy media adapted its revenue models. It's all ruthlessly optimized.
Optimized for what, exactly?
To farm our attention, minute by minute. The algorithm, essentially. It's designed to find the most effective way to keep us hooked.
And it turns out the most effective way isn't showing us, I don't know, nice things.
Apparently not. What the system discovered through just massive amounts of data, A/B testing, all that stuff, is that neutral feelings or even positive ones like curiosity or joy, they just don't drive engagement the way two specific emotions do.
Let me guess. Fear and anger.
Bingo. Fear and anger, they are the primal hooks.
Well, that makes the sort of grim evolutionary sense, doesn't it?
It does.
We're wired to spot threats.
Yeah.
Like, you walk through a field, see a pretty flower, you might pause. But if you see a snake,
Everything stops. You
Yeah,
pay
it-
attention.
right, or even just driving, you see a car crash on the side of the road.
Right.
You can't not look.
That instinct. That's what the algorithms found. And they figured out how to monetize it on a massive scale.
Monetize our survival instinct.
Oh.
Wow.
Absolutely. And the data showing this shift, this is really something. We looked at this analysis tracking how often major media outlets use certain words over time.
Okay.
The increase in language designed specifically to polarize people, it's staggering. We're talking about really inflammatory terms.
Like what?
Words like triggering, hurtful, mansplaining, language that's not really there to inform you. It's there to start a fight, basically. A cultural conflict.
And the usage of those words has gone up.
Got up by over 500% since 2010.
500%. Wait, hold on. So it's not just that we're arguing more. The media is putting 5 times the effort into making us argue.
That's what the data suggests.
That one statistic kind of says it all, doesn't it? You have to ask, like, did society suddenly get 5 times nastier in the last decade?
Or
did the money change? Did the incentive structure force media companies to ditch neutrality and start deliberately poking people with divisive language? Because that's what pays the bills now.
it really seems to be the latter. This is where that idea of perversion of economic incentives really hits home. The goal shifted. It wasn't about accurate reporting anymore.
It became about clicks, screen time, engagement metrics.
Exactly. Companies figured out that to get you to subscribe or click that link or just stay on the page longer, they had to pick a side. They had to frame things in a way that felt incomplete, provocative.
That's like behavioral conditioning almost.
Yeah.
One source we read used this great analogy.
Yeah.
Said, modern news headlines and social media posts are like playing that little tune, shave and a haircut.
2 bits.
Right. But stopping just before the last 2 notes. Dun, 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 dun.
Okay.
And then silence.
Oh, yeah. It creates tension. It's unresolved.
Exactly. It makes you uncomfortable. You feel compelled to click or comment or share just to resolve that tension to finish the tune.
That's brilliant. And it's exactly right. It's journalism, or maybe pseudo-journalism, designed explicitly to bait you, to get you to express that fear or anger, because your reaction,
Like my comment.
that's the product. That translates directly into ad revenue for them.
Whereas a calm, neutral headline, something like, hey, things are mostly okay today, go focus on your family.
That headline dies. No clicks, no revenue. It's actually bad for business under this model.
So the financial pull towards outrage just completely swamps any incentive for balanced reporting.
Overwhelmingly. The system is engineered to prioritize the click, the reaction, over the actual integrity of the information.
And that's the engine of this whole attention economy.
That's the engine. And running that engine full blast, constantly pumping out manufactured outrage, it has real, measurable effects on society, big ones.
So the logical outcome, after years and years of this kind of programming, this division for profit model, society just starts to split apart, doesn't it?
Structurally, yeah. You end up creating sort of 2 camps. There are the people who, maybe through just awareness or discipline or luck, they see the pattern, they manage to pull back a bit.
The halves of awareness, you could say.
Kind of, yeah. And then there's the other group, the ones who get completely sucked into the vortex, consumed by the manufactured outrage, the division.
The have-nots of critical distance.
And this isn't just a feeling, this split. It's measurable, especially in politics.
How so?
Well, Pew Research has been tracking this stuff for decades.
Yeah.
And the data shows the gaps in values between Democrats and Republicans right now. They are the widest they have ever been.
Wider than ever since they started measuring. When was that?
Back in the 1980s. So we're not just arguing about, tax policy anymore. We're fundamentally disagreeing on basic values, even on what constitutes reality.
Wow. And you found an even more striking piece of data, right? Not about voting, but about something more personal.
Yeah, this one, it's actually kind of heartbreaking when you think about it. Back in the 1960s, researchers asked Republicans and Democrats a simple question.
Okay.
Would you be okay if your child married someone from the opposite political party?
And back then,
Back then, about half 50% of both Republicans and Democrats said, yeah, that's fine, no big deal. It was just seen as a difference of opinion, not a fundamental character flaw.
okay, so where are we today on that?
Today, after decades of this relentless, algorithm-fueled division, that number has crashed.
How far?
Only 4% of people now marry across party lines.
4%. Down from 50.
We down from roughly 50. Think about what that means socially. Marriage is like the bedrock, the basic unit of community, stability.
Yeah.
When you stop seeing someone with different political views as just, your neighbor who thinks differently,
I start seeing them as the enemy.
as an enemy, as an existential threat to your way of life, your values, your kid's future, well, that's when real conversation just stops.
Discourse dies.
Completely. You've successfully broken the population down into these mutually suspicious, hostile tribes.
And that psychological fragmentation, that tribalism, it's actually crucial, isn't it? It sort of sets the stage perfectly for the next big failure point.
Which is the economic breakdown?
Exactly.
Yeah, this is a really important connection to make. We should probably slow down here for a second. All that manufactured outrage, the constant fighting over language, identity politics, tribal stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it works incredibly well as a diversion. All that energy, all that passion gets channeled into these endless, often unwinnable cultural squabbles,
Keeping people busy arguing about pronouns or flags.
while the deeper structural economic problems just get worse. And the people who are actually being harmed the most by those economic problems, they're too busy fighting each other to notice or unite.
It's kind of a perfect system in a terrible way. Keep them distracted with manufactured fights.
And they won't team up to ask why they can't afford a house or why the national debt is spiraling completely out of control.
So the stage is set. The neighbor is now the enemy. The population is primed psychologically.
Right. And now let's look at the economic earthquake happening underneath all that, the instability that can turn all this frustration into something much more dangerous. Okay, so the economic picture for a huge chunk of the population, especially younger folks, it's not just making the psychological stuff worse.
Yep.
It's actually laying the groundwork for, well, radicalization.
How so?
Many young adults today look at their prospects and feel pretty rationally, actually, that they're just never going to own a home, never going to build any real wealth like their parents maybe did, never find that basic economic stability.
And that feeling that you have nothing to lose, that's dangerous for a society, isn't it?
That's the breaking point, yeah. When a large part of your society feels like the system is rigged against them and they don't have any real stake in its success.
Why would they defend it?
Exactly. That's when the social contract starts to fray, people become open to radical ideas, maybe even violence. It leads to fragmentation, tribalism. It's like, you don't burn down your own house.
But maybe you burn down a house you're just renting, feeling trapped in.
Something like that. We need to really define how stark this erosion of the, American dream has become economically.
Okay.
Think about previous generations, especially like the post-World War II era. It was often possible, maybe not easy, but possible for a family to get by, own a home, that key piece of stability on just one income.
Right. That was the standard aspiration.
For many people today, that sounds like a complete fairy tale.
So let's quantify it. How bad is the housing situation?
Okay, so historically, a common benchmark for healthy housing affordability was that the median home price should be around 3 times the median household income in that area.
3 times income. Yeah.
That was considered achievable stability today. In most major cities, most desirable areas in the U.S., that ratio is closer to 7 times the median income.
Whoa, from 3 to 7, that's more than double.
More than double. That gap is just massive. It's almost impossible to bridge without, significant family help or taking on insane amounts of debt.
And that difficulty must translate into delays, right? People buying houses later.
Directly. The average age of a first-time homebuyer used to be pretty consistently in the mid to late 20s.
Starting to build equity early.
Exactly. Think about the power of that. Starting in your 20s, today the average age for that first home purchase has shot all the way up to 38 years old.
38,
Yeah.
that's over a decade later.
A decade and a half, practically. An entire generation is delayed by 10, 15 years from achieving that cornerstone of stability, of building equity, of really putting down roots. That delay is the instability we're talking about.
And meanwhile, rents are.
Rents, even adjusted for inflation, have just gone through the roof, so it's harder to save for that down payment that keeps getting bigger anyway.
Fewer and fewer options.
Right. The net effect really is the systemic, almost deliberate creation of a generation of renters instead of owners.
And that's the core risk you mentioned earlier.
That's the core risk. When people don't own property, don't have assets, don't feel like they have a real stake in how society is running, why would they go out of their way to defend it? What's the incentive to preserve a status quo that feels like it's failing you?
So the only thing left holding it together is what? Chasing consumer goods. Dealing with the dollar that buys less every year.
Pretty much. And that pressure, that desperation that leads to some really weird, distorted economic behaviors.
Like what?
Well, the most obvious symptom is the explosion of these buy now, pay later schemes. BNTL.
Oh, yeah. Those are everywhere now.
Everywhere. They're basically microloans, often with tricky terms, letting people buy stuff they can't actually afford right now.
And it's not just for big things anymore, is it?
That's the craziest part. Our research found examples where you can literally use BNPL to buy, like, a slice of pizza or a cheap fast food meal on credit.
Buying pizza on an installment plan? That sounds desperate.
It screams desperation. It's consumption now, figure out the pain later. It perfectly mirrors how governments handle debt, actually, just on an individual level.
And is it stable? Are people managing these payments?
The data is alarming. Over half, more than 50% of people using BNPL have already missed payments.
Over half. Wow.
Yeah. This isn't a sign of a healthy economy finding innovative solutions. It's a sign of people grasping at straws for short-term relief because the long-term picture looks so bleak.
So you combine this widespread economic anxiety, this feeling of being shut out,
with the constant psychological bombardment from the outrage machine we talked about earlier.
and what do you get?
You get the perfect storm, social unrest, a collapse in trust in basically all institutions, and an acceleration towards potentially systemic decline.
Okay, so now let's pull the lens back even further. Forget algorithms for a second, and let's put this moment into that deep historical context you mentioned.
Right, the big cycle.
This idea of a great power rising, having its golden age, overstretching itself, and then eventually declining. It's not new. It's not unique to us.
Not at all. It's the core idea behind the fourth turning concept, and it's the engine driving Ray Dalio's analysis of long-term debt cycles. Empires follow a pattern.
What's the pattern look like, generally?
Well, they tend to rise when debt is low and society is pretty cohesive. They peak during a time of great wealth, innovation, maybe military power. But the decline always starts when a couple of things get out of hand. One is institutional sclerosis, basically. Institutions get too rigid, too self-serving, too resistant to change. And the other, the really critical one, is debt, when debt starts growing way faster than the actual productive economy.
And the decline phase, it always looks kind of similar, regardless of which empire we're talking about.
Yeah, what's fascinating is how consistent the warning signs are. There are basically 4 big hallmarks that tell you an empire is entering its late declining phase.
What are they?
First, debt skyrockets, just relentless increases, usually paid for by printing money or finding creative ways to expand the money supply.
Okay, debt up, number one.
Second, The wealth gap between the richest and the poorest stretches to extreme, historically wide levels.
Check. Wealth gap, number 2.
Third, politics become incredibly bitter and polarized, that internal tribalism we were just discussing.
Got it. Bitter politics. Number 3.
And finally, fourth, trust in major institutions collapses. Government, media, banks, courts, even religion. People just stop believing in them.
Debt, wealth gap, political division, collapsing trust. Yeah, it feels like we're checking all those boxes right now pretty hard.
With frightening speed, honestly. And as this internal decay gets worse, empires often try to kind of insulate themselves, put up walls.
How do they do that?
Through policy. They wrap the economy in what some of our sources called a cocoon of protective policies, trying to shield themselves from the inevitable.
Can you give some recent examples?
Sure. Look at the U.S. government taking a big 10% stake in Intel recently. That's effectively a partial nationalization framed as being about supply chain security,
Ugh.
or the increased use of tariffs on imports, trying to protect domestic industries from global competition.
And the idea behind these policies is usually well-intentioned, right? Protect jobs, protect the nation.
Often, yes. The intention is usually framed in terms of protecting the empire, buying time, ensuring stability. But the outcome is often the opposite.
How so?
These protections tend to add red tape, reduce efficiency, stifle innovation. They make the empire less competitive globally in the long run, precisely because they're defensive reactions to decline, not proactive growth strategies.
It's like treating the symptoms instead of the disease.
Exactly. And to really see how this plays out financially, we have to look at history. The mechanism of financial failure is usually the same.
Okay, like Rome.
Rome is a classic example. Decades of massive overspending, mostly on the military and expansion. They got into a situation where they simply couldn't pay their bills.
So what did they do?
They started debasing the currency, literally melting down silver coins, mixing in cheaper metals like copper, and then reissuing them as if they still had the same silver value.
That's just inflation,
Yep.
mandated by the government.
It's exactly that. A desperate way to stretch their money and pay off debts. But over time, it led to insane inflation, something like 98% over a few decades. People lost all faith in the currency. Trade collapsed. Economic trust evaporated.
And you see parallels to the U.S. situation now, especially with the Federal Reserve.
There's a clear parallel in the ability to finance debt. Before the Federal Reserve was created in 1913, the U.S. currency was mostly tied to gold. That put a natural limit on how much debt the government could rack up.
You couldn't just print gold.
Right. But shifting to a central bank system and eventually a purely fiat currency money backed only by government promise, well, that unlocked the government's ability to run massive, sustained deficits.
Which is necessary for those 4 hallmarks of decline to really kick in.
Precisely. This power to expand the money supply allows the empire to kick the can down the road, to delay the pain of dealing with the debt. But it doesn't eliminate the pain, it just makes the eventual crisis potentially much worse.
What about a more recent example, like the British Empire?
Britain's decline is also directly tied to debt. The cost of fighting 2 world wars absolutely buried them financially. They were crippled by debt.
And that forced their hand.
It forced them to essentially pass the baton of global leadership to the United States. They had to give up the pound sterling status as the world's main reserve currency. History is pretty clear. Unmanageable debt is usually the deciding factor in who holds global financial power.
Which brings us right back to today. The U.S. dollar is still the world's reserve currency.
For now. But that status is definitely weakening. You see it every year as countries look for alternatives, trade in other currencies. Confidence is eroding.
And the underlying reason is debt.
The debt is out of control. It just keeps climbing exponentially. And we've reached this absolutely staggering point. You ready for this?
Lay it on me.
The amount the U.S. government now spends just on interest payments for the national debt. That amount is now larger than the entire U.S. defense budget.
Wait, really? More on interest than on the entire military.
More on servicing past borrowing than on funding the entire current defense apparatus. Think about that shift in priorities. It tells you everything about the financial fragility we're facing.
The money is effectively running out. They can't hide the problem anymore.
The cracks are becoming impossible to paper over. And this financial instability is the crucial context for all the psychological division and anger we started with.
Okay, so this is where we tie it all together, right? The economic decline, the debt, the fragility, and the psychological warfare happening with our attention.
Exactly. They're two sides of the same coin. The system of twisted economic incentives isn't just about money. It actively weakens our collective psychology. It divides us, distracts us.
Keeps us from focusing on the real structural problems.
It's like that classic magician's trick, misdirection.
How does that analogy work here?
While the empire is quietly declining in the background, the debt piling up, the currency losing value, the institutions decaying, the magician, the system, asks us to pick a card.
Focus on this other shiny, distracting thing over here.
Exactly. Pick a story. Pick a fight. Something designed purely to keep you angry and focused on fighting your neighbor, not the sister itself.
And the distractions are endless, left versus right.
Immigrants, China, Russia, the deep state, globalists. Pick your villain.
And our sources suggest that while some of these issues might have some basis in reality,
they get weaponized. They get amplified and distorted by a media ecosystem that profits directly from outrage.
Fueled by those financial interests.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned this earlier, money created out of thin air. Can you explain that part again?
Great. It's important. This isn't always just the government spending tax money. Often, especially recently, it involves the central bank, the Fed, essentially creating new money digitally.
Quantitative easing, things like that?
Exactly. Expanding its balance sheet. They do this largely to buy up massive amounts of government debt that maybe nobody else would buy at low interest rates. This keeps the government funded, keeps the system afloat. But it also injects huge amounts of liquidity into the system, which eventually leads to inflation, eating away at the value of savings for regular people. Yet it allows the government and the financial system to keep the game going and, crucially, to keep funding the distraction machine.
So the algorithm then takes that environment and just feeds you more of whatever rabbit hole you're already leaning towards. Left or right, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at all. Whatever keeps you clicking, keeps you angry, keeps you engaged, it's all driven by the revenue generated from that outrage, which in a way is underwritten by the debt and the money creation.
And the result is, well, the world we see around us.
Intense social unrest, deep, pervasive distrust, a reality where agreeing on even basic facts feels impossible sometimes. Shared goals, forget about it.
It's a fragmented, distracted, angry environment.
And that environment is exactly what the financial incentives have inadvertently or perhaps purposefully engineered to maintain the current structure even as it decays.
Okay, I have to say, that sounds incredibly dark, pretty bleak picture.
It is sobering. There's no way around that. But history does offer one crucial piece of perspective here.
Which is?
Societies do survive these cycles. These periods of crisis, decline, transformation, they happen. Life goes on. People adapt. Things get rebuilt.
The key is figuring out how to navigate this period of fragility without getting completely swallowed by it, without giving in to the hopelessness it tries to create.
Right. Avoiding the nihilism trap. #outro, sanity, action, and renewal. So that really brings us to the bottom line, the most important question for anyone listening, okay, given all this.
Yep.
How do I stay sane? How do I maintain my own stability?
Yeah, because one of the biggest risks hearing all this is falling into what some people call economic nihilism.
What's that?
That's that feeling of everything's broken, the system's rigged, it's all going down anyway, so why even bother?
Right.
Why try to build a career, save money, buy a house, Invest for the future if it's all doomed.
I see. That feeling of utter hopelessness.
Exactly. And that feeling is incredibly dangerous
Yeah.
because when a whole generation stops believing that a better future is possible,
You stop trying to build it.
right, they might even start looking for ways to tear the current system down. Embrace chaos
Mm.
because maybe chaos feels more honest than pretending things are fine.
That's a scary thought. But there's a counter argument, right? Based on history and just basic logic.
There is. Think about it. Who are the people who try to protect a society, even when it's flawed? It's the people who have a stake in it.
People who own homes, people invested in their local community, people with families, assets.
Exactly. They might want to fix things, improve things, argue about how to do it, but they generally don't want to burn it all down. They have something to lose.
So the path forward isn't about fixing the whole global system because you can't.
No, it's about radically focusing on what you can control. Your own life, your own choices, your own resilience. You can't control the Fed or Congress or the media narrative.
But you can control your own actions, how you build your personal life.
Right. So practical steps. What can people actually do? First, maybe the most important, build real things. Own tangible assets if you can. Invest in your family, your local community. These non-financial ties are like the best insulation against all this fragmentation.
Okay, build real connections and assets. What else?
Second, stay informed, but strategically. Understand the why behind what's happening, the debt cycles, the incentives. Knowing the mechanics helps you avoid just getting bitter or falling for the magician's latest trick.
Knowledge protects against manipulation. Makes sense. Third,
Third, protect your own psychology. Seriously. This means basic self-care exercise, eating well, but maybe even more importantly now, it means being ruthless about limiting your exposure to algorithmic social media. Don't let it hijack your brain and poison your outlook.
guard your attention. It's valuable. Okay, fourth.
Fourth, be incredibly careful with debt, especially high-interest consumer debt. Avoid those BNPL traps like the plague. Focus on long-term financial health. Invest patiently. Build real equity. Create a buffer that can handle bumps in the road.
Don't play the short-term consumption game. Got it. And finally,
And this ties back to everything we discussed about attention, actively reject the algorithm's influence on your character. Make a conscious choice not to let these platforms turn you into an angry, reactive, empathy-deficient person who can't have a normal conversation with someone who disagrees with them.
don't become the product.
Don't become the product. Resisting that transformation into just another node in the outrage network is maybe the most powerful act of personal defiance right now.
That's a strong point.
Yeah.
And it leads to maybe a more hopeful final thought. If we accept we're in one of these historical cycles, like a fourth turning crisis,
Yeah.
then what inevitably comes after the crisis? History is pretty clear on this too.
A first journey.
A first turning, a period of renewal, rebuilding, often a surprising return of optimism and cohesion born out of the crisis itself.
Institutions get reformed. Society finds a new footing.
Exactly. And history consistently shows that the people who navigate the crisis best, the ones who stay informed, stay disciplined, focus on building what truly matters through the chaos, those are the ones who emerge strongest. Those are the ones who lead the renewal.
So understanding the decline is actually the first step towards preparing for the eventual recovery and rebuild.
That's the hope. That's the long view.
Well, we hope this deep dive gave you some valuable context today. If you do want to dig deeper into these really big ideas, we definitely recommend checking out the source material, books like The Fourth Turning itself, or Ray Dalio's work on economic principles and debt cycles.
There's also a really detailed video discussion out there called The Collapse of the West with Balaji and Peter McCormack that hits a lot of these themes from different angles. Lots to explore.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you again soon.